Hi guys. Okay, so where we left off on the last video, we had filled out the common trig angles charts columns for 30 degrees, 45 degrees, and 60 degrees. And now we are going to fill out the rest of the chart, the quadrantal angles. So 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi directly from the unit circle. So our unit circle is over here. What up, unit circle? Here we go. At 0 degrees, we have a point on the unit circle that is 1 unit over and 0 units up. At 90 degrees, or pi over 2, we have a point on the unit circle that is 0 pi over 2. We have that is 0, 1. There we go. And then on the unit circle, when theta is pi, we have a point on the unit circle that is -1 over 0 up. And then when theta is 3 pi over 2, we have a point on the unit circle that is 0, -1. Okay, so these are the points on the unit circle. And remember when we went through all of these ratios and we found that x and y can be rewritten as cosine of theta times and the sine of theta. Okay. So x is always cosine of theta, y is always the sine of theta. So if we look at the first angle, so if we look at when theta is 0, we have a point that looks like this, 1, 0. So cosine is going to be, let me do it in red, cosine is going to be 1, and the sine of theta is going to be 0. And then since tangent is sine over cosine, we can directly substitute from our values up here, and we would get the tangent of 0 is the sine of theta, which is 0, over the cosine of theta, which is 1, and that's going to give us 0. So we have a tangent. The tangent of 0 is going to be 0. All right. Let's go to our next point on the unit circle. If we rotate pi over degrees up on the unit circle, we have a point of 0, 1. And remember that the x-coordinate is representative of the cosine of theta. So the cosine of pi over 2 is equal to 0. And sine is the y-coordinate. So the sine of pi over 2 is going to be 1. So at pi over 2, we have cosine of pi over 2 is 0. The sine of pi over 2 is 1. And then to calculate the tangent of pi over 2, we would just do sine of theta, which is 1, over the cosine of theta, which is 0. Now we know that you can't divide by 0 in math, so we would say that at pi over 2, the tangent of pi over 2 is undefined. All right, let's go do pi now. Okay. When our theta or our angle is pi, so we started here and rotated all the way over to pi, we have a point on the unit circle that is -1, 0. So we have -1, 0. We know that the x-coordinate is the cosine and the y-coordinate is the sine. So the cosine of pi is -1. The sine of pi is 0. The tangent of pi is equal to sine over cosine, and that's going to be 0. So at pi, the cosine of pi is -1, the sine of pi is 0, and the tangent of pi is 0. Let's go to 270. All right, 270. 270. Okay, so we are starting at 0 and we are rotating all the way down to 270, also known as 3 pi over 2. The point on the unit circle corresponding to that is going to be 0, -1. So I've got 0, -1. Remember that the x coordinate corresponds to cosine of theta. So the cosine of 3 pi over 2 is going to be 0. The sine of 3 pi over 2 is going to be -1. And the tangent of 3 pi over 2 is going to be sine over cosine. And we know that you can't divide by 0 in math, so the tangent of 3 pi over 2 is undefined. So we would write undefined. Cosine is 0, sine is -1. All right, we've got one more to do. So let's go back to our unit circle. Sorry, this is my erasing music. Okay, there we go. All right, so our final theta that we're working with here is going to be starting at 0 and rotating all the way over to 2 pi. So our corresponding point along the unit circle intersecting the terminal side of the angle is going to be 1, 0. If you'll notice, this is kind of hammering home the periodic nature of trigonometric functions because we have just ended up where we started off. So the cosine of theta is going to correspond to the x coordinate. Theta in this case is 2 pi, so the cosine of 2 pi will be 1. The y coordinate corresponds to sine. Theta is 2 pi, so the sine of 2 pi is going to be 0. The tangent of 2 pi will be the sine of theta over the cosine of theta. 0 divided by 1 is 0. So if we put this in our chart, the tangent of 2 pi is 0, the cosine of 2 pi is 1, and the sine of 2 pi is 0. Okay, so in tab number 3, common trig angles, this red chart should be there, and this should be something that you certainly memorize because it's going to make your life so much easier. And what do I mean by memorize? You're probably like, how the heck am I supposed to memorize a gigantic chart? Well, many people have thought of really great little tricks to remember it, okay? So if you write it out as sine, cosine, tangent, and you want to just remember the pi over 6, pi over 4, and pi over 3 ones. All the other ones, all the quadrantal ones, you can just draw a unit circle, just sketch it out real quick and figure them out really quickly. So they're like possibly not worth memorizing simply because if you can generate a simple unit circle like this and then go through and find what all the points of the quadrantal angles are, then you should be fine. But if you want some help memorizing the pi over 6, pi over 4, and pi over 3 section, just remember that pi over 6 always goes first because it's the smallest. It corresponds to 30. And then 45 goes in the middle, and then 60 at the end. So that's going to be the pi over 3. So the way you remember it, right, is you do 1/2, always goes here in the top left corner. And then since we're dealing with pi over 6, cosine has to be the other one. So rad 3 over 2. And then you can just divide to find what tangent is. So if you started with 1/2 here, that means that cosine has to be 1/2, and then sine has to be the other one, 3 over 2, that you haven't used. And then you would just divide through and get your tangent. And then pi over 4, they're all the same. Rad 2 over 2, rad 2 over 2, and then rad 2 over 2 divided by rad 2 over 2 is going to be 1. So this could possibly help you remember them. And you can also generate it in another way to remember it. You could do sine of theta, cosine of theta, tangent of theta. Oops. And then you just have pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3. And you can just remember that it's 1, 2, 3, all over 2, all over 2, all over 2, 3, 2, 1, all over 2, all over 2, all over 2. And then square root, square root, square root, square root, square root, square root. And then you have, you could just divide out for these. But just remember that the square root of 1 is 1, so you can erase the square root here, you can erase the square root here, and then you've generated the entire chart just by going 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Okay, those are just some memorization techniques. Make sure you've got the whole thing in red on your foldable tab. Thank you.